Hi, and welcome to episode 11 of Data Mesh TV. Today, we're excited to have Carl Hampson from Kin + Carta on the show. Carl is the CTO at Kin + Carta, and he's going to bring some provocative ideas, right? We like to talk about data mesh. Just when you think you've got every angle covered, so to speak, it's nice to have a guest on here that has some unique ideas, some different ideas, some ideas that I think we'll agree with, but really what they do is they offer us a different way, a different lens at which to look at the data mesh, especially when it comes from somebody like Carl, who has an incredible amount of experience. So, Carl, welcome to the show.
Hey, Adrian. Thanks for having me.
Carl, you're all over the place. Where in the world is Carl Hampson today? Are you in a mountain? I know that's a virtual screen, so I don't know what's behind you. A pyramid?
I could be in a mountain. I'm in London today, actually.
All right. Carl, tell us, before we jump into, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd love to. So I've been in data for 30 years, started with Oracle in the late 80s. I now lead the data team in Europe at Kin + Carta. So I spent 10 years working on very large transactional systems, operational systems, if you like, some of the biggest of their day, client service systems. And that was great. I learned a lot. And then everything changed during the dot-com boom. And I founded a consultancy with some of my Oracle friends, focusing on problems involving unstructured data, so text, voice, video, documents, emails, and such like. So taking data from operational systems, unstructured data, and then building what I'd call sort of early data products, analytical products to do something cool and solve a business problem. So things like early machine learning, automation, classification, and a big one, search. And that then took me on the journey I've been on since then, through a few acquisitions to where I am today, Kin + Carta.
When did you build your first data product? Whether you called it a data product then or not, what year was that?
Oh, that's a great question. I think, if I'm honest, I've always thought of everything that we've done really as a product, something we've wanted to actually put out there and live and breathe rather than just an application. Yeah. I remember distinctly in the earlier part of my career that you'd build something and then you're kind of done, you'd go off and almost forget about it. But in running our own consultancy, we were very passionate about taking anything we did and owning it and trying to sell a managed service around that. So it was always considered a product. So I think we were thinking about products in that way before we were really calling them products.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. I can go back for sure 2018, maybe 2017. We had a data as a service model. We weren't using the term data product, but we had fact tables and such where we were creating reusable aggregated sets. So this is a new concept. I think what we didn't have then was a framework of people and organization that data mesh provides that now says, okay, if you're going to build a data product, here's the supporting foundation that you're going to need to make it work. But let's start with provocative comment number one from Mr. Carl Hampson. So you don't need a data mesh to build a data product or to drive product thinking.
Yeah, great one. So, I mean, what I've been trying to do, Adrian, and this comes from conversations that I've been having with data leaders and customers. They'll come to us and say, hey, we don't really want to tear up our investment in our data architecture yet, right? So, we think we've got good governance. We've actually got some of the virtues of a mesh embedded already. We've got good ownership. The kind of, without calling it a mesh, they've got some of the goodness of that happening. And they're like, well, what do we do? Or what should we do? Should we tear it up and start again? It doesn't feel like the right thing to do at the moment. So that kind of got me thinking about looking at this from the other end of, really what we're trying to enable here is for businesses to be more data driven, democratizing data. So if you turn that around, think, well, what can we do to actually improve the consumer experience? So if you imagine data mesh is the back end and it's obviously the ideal we all love, what if you look at this from the other end and kind of think of the consumer experience as being, I guess, decoupled from the implementation, the back end. I think thinking about things as products, packaging things in a way that means that they're trusted and discoverable. Sure, you could do all of that without a data mesh, genuinely. But in fact, we actually are on this journey.
I think our business teams, organizational change management, if you think of where I know in my experience where our business teams are going, they were going towards these product focused teams way before we started talking about data mesh, right? So that in a way, I would say the business has led us here. I know in Amazon, they used to call it a pizza box team, right? The idea is you have a small team, right? That's focused. And an old boss of mine used to say, the IT people on that team are business intimate. They know the business objectives. They understand the business challenges. They know the data they're working with. You create a small focused team and you don't pluck them out when the project is over. They're dedicated over a long period of time for the life cycle of whatever that product is. Again, not thinking about a data product. I'm thinking about a product as something that's valuable for the business, right? A product might be a new sales element for unit, if you will, for a company, or a product might be a specific item that you're going to sell to someone. Long story short, a product could be a number of different things, right? Whether you're in banking or pharmaceuticals, come back to that in a second, or energy. But you have a dedicated team working on delivering it and defining it over a long period of time. In order for that product to be successful, especially in today's world, because anything that we build is going to have data on the back end, there is a demand. Okay, now I've got a product-centric team. Now I need data products to support that team, right? And so you can start thinking about domains to support those product-centric teams. So we do kind of step forward and say, yeah, you don't need a data product to drive product thinking in a company, but I do think you need data products if you want to accelerate those product teams. And so when we start thinking about data mesh and data products, I love the analogy that you present. I'm going to steal it. I said, I'm going to let them talk about it publicly. And once you share it publicly, Carl, anybody can steal it. So I'll make sure I give you credit. But tell me about your pharmacy analogy, because I really think that for anyone that's trying to understand data mesh, or anyone that needs a good example to help a customer understand how it works and how the benefits actually are delivered, that pharmaceutical example is fantastic.
Sure. So I'll start by saying that I also did not come up with this, but in some of the early research I did around data mesh, I came across this example as an analogy. We were using actually kind of trusted bodies of water before that. So let me get into it. I mean, the magic ingredient that's going to drive consumption is package data, which is trusted, high quality, and useful. And the idea of saying data as a product, it feels like sort of quite an abstract concept for the average person. So it kind of got me thinking, where in real life do we experience something like this? And I started doing a bit of research, and I actually found somebody talking about this. I think it's a TED talk actually, which I subsequently could never find again. But it basically, the analogy is over-the-counter medicine. So you walk into a pharmacy, there's a nice curated range of products. Everything's trusted to deliver an outcome, nicely packaged, branded, clear instructions, easily identifiable. And you have a need, you identify the product, you can go and speak to the pharmacist if you need some help. You don't need to be a scientist to buy over-the-counter medicines. And it just works. And this I think is a great analogy for data as a product, that if data products and packaged data was effectively available in this way, and we trusted it in the same way as over-the-counter medicines, that would be a fantastic platform on which to start democratizing data.
I think the most important word that resonates with me is trust, right? If I sit back and think of that picture, I've got a supplier on the back end who is supplying drugs. Some of them are prepackaged drugs, and nowadays in most pharmacies, a lot of that is powder that some the pharmacists haven't put together themselves. But forget that for a second. You have a supplier delivering drugs, so there's got to be trust between the pharmacy or the pharmacist and the supplier that they're getting good quality drugs. They put these drugs together, and then they, as you said, they offer them in the pharmacy, right? I love the idea of over the counter. Hopefully, most of it is over the counter, right? If every drug we needed a prescription, we probably would. It would take forever to kind of get the drugs you want. So you want to think that most of the medicine you need, most of the data products you're looking for are over the counter. You walk into the pharmacy, everything's organized, everything's labeled, you know exactly what aisle to go to. You take it off the shelf and it tells you this data product addresses these symptoms, these problems, right? This data product is made with these ingredients. These are the owners. This data product, we don't have this at a pharmacy today, but in a data product, you would say, here's the quality of the medication or the quality of the data in the data product. But you make it so simple for someone who's in need, a data scientist or a data analyst or a business person looking for insight, to quickly go into, where you're going. I'm going to that marketplace, that pharmacy, and I'm going to get what I need. And I trust that whenever I take the data product, that it's going to solve my problem. And fair enough, there's going to be some drugs that you can't get off the shelf because they're confidential, or they have data sets or medications that are you're not privileged to, so to speak, and you're going to need a prescription or permission. So the analogy fits perfectly, I think, in what we're trying to do.
Yeah, and I think you picked up on trust. The other thing I feel about the pharmacy analogy is that everything's very well curated. So that might seem like there's an overwhelming array of products to choose from, but actually there isn't. I mean, if you think of that compared to, you could go in and there are 50 different versions of a, headache pill or something like that. You're never looking at one product and then having to work out, like, do I trust that? Has that got fake reviews? I'm really not sure about that. You kind of look at what's there. You might speak to the pharmacist, but generally you're going in with a sense of trust about whatever's presented to you. And I think that experience for data and data products is dynamite. We can capture that. And in actual fact, I have seen this play out. So one of the things that I mentioned earlier on in my experience, we worked a lot with search, enterprise search, knowledge management. There was an example of the same kind of problem being solved in two different ways, going back a few years for knowledge management. One was where a very highly curated set of content was basically put into a product and, if you like, deployed. Users were given access very slowly, small community, and it sort of grew outwardly. The other was literally like, let's just dump everything that we can find on our servers into a search engine and then give that to everybody, like literally full enterprise search. So you imagine the comparison there: highly curated, very, very small community, start small. And then the other was kind of the art of the possible with technology, big bang, we can go and grab everything. So let's just put it in a product and then, deploy it. One of those was very successful and the other wasn't. And I kind of leave you to guess which one it was. Right. And I kind of look back on that and think that was actually the choice of the client. We could have gone either way in that regard, but we had a very smart client in this particular case who said, look, I know, Carl, you want to go faster, but I'm going to go really slow because I think the change management aspect of this and getting trust, building trust around the curated content is the way to go. And that product still runs today, like many years later. So he was right. But I think that's really what this is all about in terms of the pharmacy analogy as well, the data.
Yeah, I want to add one more. Let's keep talking about this pharmacy analogy for a little bit longer, because there's a lot of different ways to use it. One of the customer conversations I have quite often is, what does a data product look like? And then there's a couple different questions. One is, how big is it? Second question is, how interoperable is it really? What I mean is, do I design a data product truly to work for a dashboard and an ML engine and an automation engine all at the same time, right? And three is, how do I manage access? Do I design a data product that can be accessed by everybody, or do I lock it down? And there's no straight answer for that. We could say, well, let's look at the use case, right? I don't know about you, Carl. I like small data products. You can build them big. I get it, but to me, the smaller they are, they're easier to manage, and to me, that you can use them in more places. Does that mean that's a perfect answer? No, right? Right now, for any organization that's building a data mesh, I would say, build a data product for a specific use case. And if somebody down the hall wants to use the same data and they're going to build the same data product for a different use case, same data product, if you will, but they might change the refresh rate or they might make some amendments to it. They're going to do it differently for a specific, because they're driving an ML engine, so they need more history maybe. You're driving a dashboard, all you care about is today. What I'm saying is, I'm okay to take the same data product and build two copies of it with some variations, because I think that's where we are in the maturity phase. I would tell people, don't overthink it right now. Focus on value. We can optimize later. Do you give similar advice, or do you view it differently?
I agree. I mean, again, I would probably go back to there's two sides to that, really. I think there's the sort of utility of having two different products, but then the challenge of discovering two different products and having to sort of somehow or other differentiate between them. I think that's interesting. It's back to the kind of point I made earlier on, if you don't really have to work out, 50 different things. So these are probably some of the challenges that we can deal with going forward. But I agree, like, kind of just get going and focus on quality. What are those products? what is the burning need at the moment? What are the core data sets? What are the core KPIs? What are the core, dashboards or models? And really start to curate something that people look at and trust. May not have everything in it, but then as it grows, you can start to do more with it. And another great analogy that I always refer to for that is Google, right? You look at Google, 1998. What was Google doing? Web pages. What is Google today? It's, I don't know, 15 different applications, all behind one experience. And the illusion is that you think I'm going to Google, but actually you're very quickly in a very different experience that's serving up entirely different content, like maps or web pages or shopping or whatever else. But the illusion is you can still go and find it in one place. I genuinely think that kind of model will play out with data products, so that there will be specialist places to go for certain things. We're not there yet, but we've certainly got a pattern out there that we can learn from, in the likes of Google, to solve that problem when it comes.
Well, that's the idea. I think Zhamak talks about creating she doesn't say frictionless. She says a low friction environment for the consumer, right? And so when you can reduce the friction, abstract the complexity for the consumer, like Google has done, right? Google search engine was so easy. I just kept going there. Next thing I know, I go there for everything. Amazon, right? Book club, book company, it was so easy. Now I just go there for everything. When you make that user experience so easy, everything else comes along, so to speak. They had that trust in that marketplace. They know that they can go, and they know that experience is going to be the same thing no matter what they do, whether I'm buying or checking an email. It's all going to be easy. Let's talk more about that marketplace. I think you're onto something there about creating that marketplace. I've read in some material that you've written, Carl, the idea that we're not there yet. I was a big I've used all the big catalogs. Right? I was a big Calibra customer back in my old world, and I know the journey that it takes to kind of get down to those big enterprise catalogs. I know the promise that they hold and so forth. A lot of work being done behind the scenes. And then the visions that you talk to the Elations and the Calibras and others of the world is fantastic. We don't get there overnight, but we're not there yet. It's a comment that I read in your article. Where do you think we are? And when you say we're not there yet, what's missing?
That's a great question. The vision for a marketplace. I mean, we could debate this for the rest of the afternoon. And I love that, by the way. Catalog versus marketplace. What are we saying? So my kind of view of this is, and this has really only come about through actual discussions with colleagues, with clients, doing my research. I think a marketplace sits on top of a catalog. A marketplace is a much more consumer-focused tool. A marketplace might be the single place you go to in the future to find anything, to your actual start point with data. Whereas a catalog, almost the sort of sense of data catalogs, I think for people is, well, if you can't write SQL, then don't bother turning up, sort of thing. There's a sort of sense that it's a technical thing. You have to be data literate. One of the things that I talk about a lot in Kin + Carter is the idea of data literacy, and how do we enable everybody to make decisions with data? What are those tools? I just want the insight or the KPI. I didn't want to know what data is behind it. Just let me leapfrog the data. So I think the marketplace is a way to go and discover data products that can appeal to a whole range of personas. So if you want the raw data and you want to go and build models, great, that's fine. Arguably that potentially persona is sort of covered today. But what about just the sort of a single place, going back to that Google analogy? Where do you go? I need some data to make a decision to do X. I want to go to a place that's going to give me data products or data that is absolutely trusted. It is the answer I'm looking for. It is that sort of pharmacy trust, level of trust. And I can go and find it. Now, that may end up being multiple marketplaces, but I think just from talking to our own customers, looking at what's out there in the market, the problem with a catalog is, if you start from the idea of, well, let's just go and sort of literally catalog everything we have, that's the sort of meat and potatoes of that problem. We actually need to create the catalog. The experience to allow you to engage with that and find stuff sort of comes afterwards. So again, I'm taking that idea and projecting it into the future. Data mesh is going to be the next decade. We're all in debt to Zhamak for, really sort of bringing this to us all. And we're, as data professionals, we're excited about that. I'm sort of interested in representing the consumer side as well. And how can we create these really amazing, intelligent experiences for any employee to engage with data. So, like, I'm going way past what a catalog is. I'm kind of thinking, you know, we're going to have Gen Z, millennials coming in. You know, they're used to social media, influencers. Like, how do we bring all of that thinking to data? You know, a data product influencer, somebody that's going to say, you know, hey, look, I've got this really cool trusted thing. It'll tell you everything you need to know if you're frontline worker or whatever else. I don't know. But that's why I'm saying there's a massive gap between what I'm talking about and the catalogs we have now.
I love the big, ambitious ideas, because painting it is the hard part, I think, actually, right? Then you say, well, hold on, getting there is harder. Maybe, right? But then you can sit back and say, all right, I know what I'm trying to get, right? I want this fantastic user experience where the customer catalog, I'm with you, right? Because catalog, there's still a little bit of work in the catalog, right? You go into a catalog, you got to find the pieces, and you got to figure out how to put the pieces together, and then you got to make sure you got the right pieces. And so, but those are all great steps. Somebody's got to take them somewhere. You're saying a finished marketplace, right? Everything's already prepackaged and ready to go, right? If I don't have what I'm looking for, fine, I'll go do those other steps. But hopefully most of what I'm looking for is already pre-built, already prepackaged. I'm taking it off the shelf, I'm paying for it or getting it for free, and I'm walking out the door, and I'm solved, so to speak, or I'm healthy. What do we do today to get there quickly, right? I think, and this is the way that I advise my customers, is I think we take it in pieces. I think that there are consumers today that are ready to take that step. They're hungry. They want to be self-serve. They love a self-service concept. They want to work in autonomous teams. They're ready to kind of take on that responsibility, because it is a responsibility. Yes, we're going to make it easy for you, but you've got some responsibilities. And I think in any large organization, if you've got that consumer that's ready to start working that way, you can accelerate your journey. If you try to solve it for everybody all at the same time and try to lift the organization there all at once, that's far too difficult, and you may not get there. But if you focus agile thinking, start small, focus on one team at a piece, so to speak, and kind of work your way up, I think you've got a fighting chance. You can implement a marketplace for one team and make them successful, and then add other teams to the marketplace. We're used to these big waterfall programs. Back, you and I both have the gray hair. We've been doing these projects for a long time, right? And that's just not the way it's done anymore, right? Agile is a much better approach. Do you have customers that are already starting to adopt your vision of what that marketplace is?
We are having not only these conversations, but yeah, we are working on these kinds of things. Absolutely. And it really does come down to what you're referring to there. I was speaking to one of our strategists, great strategists here at Kenny Carter. And he kind of threw the term product market fit at me very quickly when I described this. It's like, actually, to your point, we need to find that marketplace tool, that thin slice that's going to get that 40% adoption. 40% of the users are going to cry if we take it away from them. So how do we find that kind of community, give them this amazing marketplace product that really serves their need? And maybe it is multiple marketplaces, and we have to address it, in steps. To my point earlier on, that there is no big bang product. So I do genuinely believe that this is something that is probably not going to be bought off the shelf. Those sort of defensive strategies of, let's just go and buy the latest technology. And I've seen that for the last 30 years. And, if I actually look at where we are today, I started my career building Oracle Forms, like in the late 80s. And I look today and think, wow, have we really moved on? I mean, we're still using forms. I thought we would have moved well past that. And I'm damned if I'm going to end my career and still see forms as I want to be scrolling with my phone and, my left hand and eating cornflakes or whatever, and my right hand, we're looking through data products or looking at insights from data products. We're ready for it now. And there's nothing stopping us doing that. I think what Zhamak has done with the marketplace, with the data mesh, is giving everybody a chance to get your heads up, just look at what's going on, everybody. We can do this better. But I just think we should take that kind of whole thing and, project the experience, the whole consumer experience forward as well in the enterprise.
And AI is going to play a big role in that, right? Once we start to create more consistent data products that we trust, that we know where they're coming from, and then it becomes somewhat of a reliable supply chain, if you will, of data products, then I think you can start to apply real AI, not on creating the data products themselves, but on using the data products. I think that's the next, hopefully not too much further down the road, for us to see is a real application of AI engines on driving insight from data products. Today, I think we're trying to use AI to create them, which is the right step. Hopefully, we'll get ahead of it pretty soon. We're running out of time. I didn't want to run out of time without asking you about this term, this phrase that I saw in your writing. You called it the great data tension. Tell us a bit more about what is that?
Yeah. So as part of, and thanks for bringing that up, by the way. It's actually the first slide in any deck that we use to explain how we talk about data at Ken & Carter. But it actually came about from a conversation that we were having internally, just to try and frame what's actually going on out there in the world with data. We're kind of used to the idea that data is growing exponentially. That's absolutely. Maybe the amount of data that's created the amount of data that's being stored is slightly less than the amount of data created. But one thing's for sure, that the value we're generating from data is not tracking the amount of data that is being created or stored. There is a gap between those. And that area on the curve, if you like, is what we call the data tension. We've absolutely got to start closing that gap so that otherwise we have this unsustainable situation. We can't just keep storing data. And it's also not the responsible thing to do if we're not generating value from it. So we use that sort of backdrop as a means to sort of frame, well, how can we start to incrementally get value from data? There's no pivot really that's going to make that happen. We think of it as a staircase, and in fact, actually a staircase of data products. So taking these small steps that are going to gradually, close that gap in the shaded area between the value and the data stored. That's everybody has everyone is somewhere on that graph as it stands, and it's a good talking point and a good way to really frame the sort of starkness of the world we're in today with data.
A lot of different ways to take that. I think it resonates for sure. Well, Carl, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it. Coughing on a live show is never a good thing. But anyway, enough with the cough. Thank you so much for joining us. And hopefully we can edit my coughing out of the show later.
I hope so. You're right.
I'm like struggling here. All right. I think it's never happened to me before. But anyway, Carl, thanks for joining us. I think we had a great show, a number of topics. I think we talked everything from whether or not you need data mesh or data products, which I think is the idea there is, no, you don't, right? Product thinking is something that stands above and beyond the data mesh. Came back and talked about data products and said, if you want to accelerate product thinking, data products is the right way to do it, or a data mesh is the right way to accelerate product thinking. We talked a lot about that data mesh. We talked a lot about the data product. Loved the pharmacy analogy. I think we all have to kind of picture, right, an idea of what good looks like. And a pharmacy is an incredible example because one, I go walk into a store, a pharmacy, and I trust what's on the shelf. Two, if I need advice, I've got a pharmacist behind the counter. Three, everything I need is in the package, right? So as a consumer, I can pick it up, I can use it quick, I can heal myself, so to speak. I probably need to go to a pharmacy myself right now because some cough medicine and use it quickly. Yeah. And then the last thing there, I think, is then the idea of it's not just having the pharmacy and the packaged products, it's having a marketplace that's easy for the consumer, right? If they walk in the pharmacy and they can't find what they're looking for, you lose. They walk in the pharmacy and it takes a long time to get something off the shelf, you lose. If they walk into the pharmacy and they're confused as to which data product you want, you lose, right? So it's that user experience, ultimately, that marketplace. We're not there yet. We're trying to kind of get there soon. If you can create the marketplace and trusted data products and support the product thinking in the organization, you're onto something, right? That's a data mesh. That is an organizational and technology, so to speak, approach to solving some of the bigger business problems. So thank you so much, Carl, for your time. I apologize for the coughing there. I think I worked myself through it there. I even incorporated the cough.
You better again.
So, great show today. Really appreciate it. And we look forward to episode 12 down the road. Thank you.
Thanks, Adrian.